Welcome to Viva la Vulva, the podcast that explores and teaches about the goodness of the vulva. Here is your host, Dr. Kara Quant, an internal medicine doctor and advocate for female sexual health.
And for you to thrive and to also help other people to thrive and feel empowered in their pleasure. That's dope.
Thank you so much. It is my honor because, when you are diagnosed with cancer, when you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, one of the first things that happens is that you are completely desexualized. You're completely dehumanized. And so, finding your way back to or keeping that connection with that part of your womanhood is oftentimes extremely, extremely challenging. So I think that these conversations are really important. And, I'm just so grateful that I get to not only share my experience, but hopefully empower other women to understand that we are worthy of pleasure, that we are deserving of pleasure, and that even throughout all of the challenges that we may face, whether it be treatment, whether it be cancer treatment, I should say, whether it be chronic illness, whether it be shifts in ability. I also have a history of sexual assault in my past as well. So there are so many avenues in which our connection to our sexuality can be completely broken. But there's also the possibility, not just for reconnection, but to be able to thrive in your womanhood and in your sexuality after hardship.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could give a million excuses as to the reason why you don't want to find your pleasure and connect to your your intimacy. Also told myself, actually, someone connected us. Her name is Neka Hall.
Yeah.
She connected me with many other women who I'm excited to do podcast episodes with in this next year. But I told her, I was like, I want more women of color on my podcast because I'm a woman of color. I'm queer. I'm, a doctor, and I feel like it's important to have this information put out there.
Absolutely.
I'm just excited to have this
We're just
conversation.
normalizing a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not something that is often spoken about with the level of reverence and with the level of attention, that should be given, specifically when we're talking about women of color, when we're talking about women who are queer or who are in the LGBTQIA plus community. We just had a session, we call our Thirsty Thursday session, which we have every first Thursday of the month. And in June this year, we did a very special session of our Thirsty Thursday series, which was for the LGBTQIA plus community, for women of color, about how to advocate for yourself in the clinical space, how to advocate for yourself in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom because before we can even get into sex and get into pleasure, you have to start with your personal agency. You have to start with self-love. You have to start with self-care, and you have to start with the belief that you are worthy of this so that you can acquire the skills to advocate for yourself, to make sure that you don't lose that part of your sexuality. You don't lose that connection to the pleasure that we all need as human beings. That's how the generations move forward. Without pleasure, without sex, without enjoyment, without that intimacy, we cease to exist. So it is integral to who we are as people, integral to who we are as a society.
Yeah. Well, I love that the Thirsty Thursdays that you host and the topics that you bring, including about queer women and advocating for your health. And I feel like that is such an important thing. As a doctor, have patients coming to me, and I feel like there are some who advocate for themselves better than others. And I've even had on this podcast of tips and tricks on how to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
I do feel like that is such an important thing.
It is.
Especially because, I think us or me as a queer person and understanding the queer experience, I feel like my experience can be downplayed. Or the statistic about providers not believing Black women when it comes to pain and
Yes,
all
ma'am.
the things and symptoms. So how to advocate for yourself is just, it's such an important topic.
It is.
So
It
important.
is.
Yeah.
And
But I wanted to get into the
yeah,
Prowl the Lab. So
yes.
what motivated you to create this platform?
Well, as I say, I've had a host of issues when it comes to, I guess biologically, if you will, my reproductive system. But beyond it just being my reproductive system, it's the evolution of my sexuality as from girlhood to womanhood. And so I've always had this challenge of never really feeling normal because I have my experience was so different from so many of the other young women, even my sister and my really close friends that I was growing up alongside. I also had precocious puberty, which means my cycle came on before the age of 10. So I developed very early. So, having your body begin to bud and bloom before your mind has the ability to put that into context has always, or should say, especially when I was younger, that was a huge challenge for me. And then as I started matriculating through all of these different, comorbidities and these diagnoses, it just became so much more of a challenge. I think about when I was first diagnosed with lupus, and it was 3 months after my son was born, the level of pain, the level of fatigue, and just everything that my body went through, knowing that I had a husband that I still wanted to be connected to. I had a husband that I used to chase around the house, and now I can hardly get out of the bed. That was a significant shift in our relationship. That was a significant shift in our intimacy. And then when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, it became even worse because what some of us experience, not all of us, depending upon your stage, depending upon your treatment plan, but the vast majority of those of us who are diagnosed with breast cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, uterine cancer, we are thrown into not just perimenopause, not menopause, straight up super menopause, which you literally feel like you are losing your mind from Monday to Tuesday. Like it literally just flew out of your head and you don't know how to capture it.
Wow.
Everything from the hot flashes, the mood swings, the hormonal changes, the vaginal dryness, the lack of desire, and I think sometimes we kind of narrow that lack of desire to the lack of desire for sex, but it's many times the lack of desire of many things that
Yeah.
bring you pleasure in life, not just that sexual connection to others. And so when I sought help, honestly, I was turned away. I was told I had the wrong type of cancer. Now, my oncologist literally sent me to this department within the healthcare ecosystem in Chicago that I was a part of for my treatment. And when I started having issues and I spoke to her, I was like, I really would like to speak to someone in, regarding sexual health and wellness. And they sent me to the department that was created for this, and I was turned away. They wouldn't help me, they would not refer me anywhere else. The level of just sorrow that I
Mm.
felt in that moment, I'm still connected to it. I still feel it. But I promised myself that I would do everything that I could so that there was not another woman. I don't care if she's a woman of color. I don't care if she's a white woman. I don't care if she's young, old, middle age, whatever the situation may be. I would never sit by idly and let other women go through what I was going through and feel alone, feel unsupported, and not just have a lack of support, but a lack of education, a lack of guidance, a lack of community. And I went back to that same department maybe about a year and a half ago. And I actually spoke to the owner, and she's like, I don't know who told you that. She's like, breast cancer is the reason that we actually started this clinic. She's like, I have no idea who told you this. I don't know, who turned you away. And I told her, I said, I appreciate you telling me that, but I also know that had that experience not have happened, I would not be in this space that I am in today. I would not be the advocate that I am today. Proud the Lab would not exist the way that it does today, and it would not serve the purpose and the mission and the vision that we have were it not for that experience. So sometimes, you know, uh, there is grace and there is beauty and there are gifts that can be found in hardship.
Yeah.
And the creation of Proud the Lab was that gift.
Thanks for joining me today on the Viva La Vulva podcast. I am your host and internal medicine physician, Dr. Kara Quant. If you like this podcast, please let others know and subscribe. Also, if you want to hear more information about what's happening with Viva La Vulva, pop over to our website at vivalavulvala.org and sign up for our newsletter.